This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
It's the show where we take you inside the game before the game begins. It's the pregame. With your host, Charles Bishop and Neely. So get ready, because we pregame harder than the other show's party. It's the pregame.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1. This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope.
But
Hello, good evening, and welcome to a special live edition of the BCSN Sports Wrap. I'm over there to the left of that screen, of our screen, is AD Drew. And of course, to the right is our good friend Kris Ferguson. So, whenever we see Kris and Drew in the same space, that means we're talking about D2 football. And what an amazing season as we get ready to talk about the CIAA and SIAC football championship games. Drew, Kris, how's everybody doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, my brother. I'm doing fine, man.
It's a good
How
day.
about you, Kris?
It's a real good day. Doing good.
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Are we
Just a little wet
excited
where I'm
about
at.
these? Oh, well, sure. Yeah, it seems to be wet. It's wet in a lot of it's wet in a lot of places down in the South, thanks to Tropical Storm Nicole. But my general question as we get going: are we excited about these championship games? Kris is shaking his head. Drew, I know you're excited with your alma mater playing for a title.
Of course, I'm excited that Tuskegee decided to get back into the football business. We've been the best at it in HBCU history. But, the last couple of years, we decided to take a break and let a few other people go ahead and win the championships and get a few wins and everything else. So what did we do? We go get one of the most successful coaches over the past decade and bring him home back to Mother Tuskegee. And Coach Reginald Ruffin is in his not one, not two, not three, but fourth consecutive SIAC championship game. The previous three with Miles, and then his last SIAC championship game, so he says, with Tuskegee.
All apologies to Benedict and Fayetteville State fans. We promise this won't be a heavy Tuskegee University show. Kris, what's exciting to you about these football championships?
Oh man, you know what? It's hilarious. Over the past week, we've just seen so many people that have been just in their feelings about Chowan making the championship game, and I think. And it's just been, it's kind of refreshing in a way to see yet another school in the championship game, which is what I'm excited about. Fayetteville State's in it for like the fifth straight time, and it's just like, man, like, can anybody else in the South challenge what's going on? And it doesn't seem
Not since Winston-Salem got out the football business.
Yeah, well, yeah, they I don't think they have any plans to return anytime soon right now. It's just tough, man. It is really tough. But on the north side, it's just refreshing to see yet another school make it. Although I think everybody was excited for Virginia Union to get there, and then they just fumbled the bag at the last second, and here we are.
Yeah, it's good that you kind of mentioned that, because I think when we start this show and this opening segment, and we just kind of recap this season, whether it be from the CIAA or the SIAC, I think that's probably story 1A, maybe. 1B might be Benedict, but 1A is maybe the fact that Virginia Union is not in this game, because we watched them conquer so many teams, and I think we all woke up when we saw them travel and knock off number 2 Valdosta State on the road. Then they handled Fayetteville State on the road. They handled Bowie State on the road, and I think we just assumed, right? I mean, we thought, and look, their rival Virginia State was on the road warriors, and we watched Virginia Union rise, and then all of a sudden, it just goes to show football. One bad day, it's a game of inches, a game of turnovers, and just like that, man, it's gone. Now, I mean, we all hope and assume that Virginia Union has a shot at going to the playoffs, but it does sting a little bit that they're not here. So, I mean, that might be story 1A. What sort of has been, Kris, coming back to you as you kind of recap this season, maybe a storyline or two that's caught your attention, and feel free to piggyback off of the Union story or anything else that's out there on your mind.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger stories was the emergence of Jada Byers as a legit Harlan Hill candidate. Harlan Hill is the Division II equivalent trophy, and he not just leads in all-purpose yards, but actually leads in rushing yards, and it's not even close. And so I think that he's a sophomore, and to be leading Division II is amazing, to say the least. If I had some other storylines from the CIAA, Kyle Jackson's first season, I think, has been kind of overlooked. Somebody who came in and had to kind of rebuild the coaching staff and figure out how to run the show for his own. And, not only doing that, but beating Dr. Henry Frazier at his own game, the wily veteran at Virginia State now, who's a former Bowie State coach, Bowie State quarterback. So I think that's a very overlooked storyline that was definitely a surprise, as to see how he's been able to, at least in a bit of a transition year, still put together a pretty good showing and still be the top 25 team to boot.
How about you, Drew? What are some storylines as you think back and sort of recap this season that have caught your attention?
I'm going to start with the obvious one, Brian. 700 for Tuskegee. And it's not the fact that they got 700. Of course, a lot of people thought they were going to get victory number 700 last year. So to go through the whole offseason at 699, and then to beat a West Alabama for victory 700. And what's significant about 700 is they did not stop right there. They have not lost since picking up victory number 700. Storyline number one. Storyline number two is, do you know that an HBCU has the longest current winning streak in Division II football? That being the Benedict Tigers, who are the winners of 12 in a row. They won the last 2 games of last year and have won all 10 games this year. So Benedict has the longest current winning streak in Division II football. That's story number 2. And then probably story number 3, and I'm going to stay with the SIAC. The disappointment in Lane season for me. Lane, the only team in the SIAC West that not only returned its head coach, but also returned its quarterback and a lot of key players on both sides of the ball. And for them to finish 3rd in the SIAC West, especially after that opening game against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Yes, it's Arkansas Pine Bluff. And Arkansas Pine Bluff has done what Arkansas Pine Bluff has done, except for their spring season. But you expected, when you saw this showing by Lane in their first game, that they were going to be a player in the SIAC West, and have turned out not to be, and being very inconsistent.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna mess with you, because I find it funny that you made the Tuskegee story 1. How is the Benedict story not number 1, Drew? Get out of here. I love Tuskegee for winning 700, but Benedict did something that they have never done. Now, look, I know Tuskegee has never won 700, and I get it. But when you have a school that has never done, and I'm not talking after they got the 3-0, Drew, 4-0 has never been done. So 6-0, 7, 8, 9, 10-0, never been done. Only unbeaten in Division II HBCU football. Come on, man. That is story.
Can I answer that?
Sure, I'll
I,
give you because I know you're gonna get
I'm
beat
gonna
up
make it
by the
quick.
Benedict folks. So go ahead.
I'm gonna make it quick. Two things, Brian. 10-0 may have never been done by Benedict, but 10-0 has been done before. 700 has never been done
Oh
before by an
boy.
HBCU.
See,
So
Chris. See,
that's unique. That's the
this
unique
is how.
angle on it. And
Yes, I get.
like Brian, you coach just like I do. Act like you've been there before. Oh, my bad. Tuskegee has been there before.
Wow. Okay, so anyway, and Chris, love you. I love you. But that's but it's funny. I was looking at the preseason predictions for all of these teams, and let me see if I quickly have this pulled up. Over in the CIAA, of course, Fayetteville State was predicted order of finish second behind Bowie State, and yeah, I think Bowie State's story is very impressive and one of the better stories. And I think you mentioned I would say maybe Shaw. You mentioned Drew Lane falling apart, but let's give Lane credit. Lane College for pulling off the Division I upset of Tennessee State. Might have been one of the games of the year. So although overall as a season, Lane may have disappointed, I will credit Lane for having one of the best games of the year. But preseason order predicted, Fayetteville State was actually predicted to finish second in the beginning of the year, and in the CIAA 1 to 12 ranking, Shawan was actually fifth. So they had to overcome Virginia Union, obviously, and Bowie State in order to who were predicted 1 and 3. And then over on the SIAC side, Benedict was actually preseason ranked number 2 behind Albany State. Uh, Last year, Benedict finished 5th in the East Division. And then over on the West, Tuskegee was preseason number 3. So, obviously, and they finished 4th the year before. So you got in the SIC, you got a team that finished 5th last year, a team that finished 4th. Both teams are coming into this ball game streaking red hot. I'm trying to think as I just kind of glance over. Well, let's. You kind of mentioned some disappointment and surprises. Chris, come back to you. Any disappointment, large disappointments, that you've witnessed or seen over the course of this year that you care to bring up?
Yeah, Shaw, like, good grief. I mean, injuries and just, quarterback play, season running, except for when they played Livingstone and Andre Brandon had like 300 yards rushing, literally. But Shaw as the contender in the South, I mean, they just fell apart, and it was painful to watch. Man, it was so bad to watch. John C. Smith started really hot, but they really regressed to the mean as the season wore on, and I don't think they were ever the same when their starting quarterback got knocked out with a concussion. So they just sort of just couldn't really do but so much as the season wore on. So Winston State, if AD gets to talk, great about his alma mater, I kind of go in the opposite direction. They had a schedule that was like Charmin soft. I mean, think about the teams they had to play. Central State lost. Elizabeth City, they lost. Livingstone hadn't lost to them since 1998. Well, they lost to them this year. I mean, we kind of crack about homecoming. They didn't have homecoming because of a hurricane, but Lincoln was a serious threat to win in that game too. It was just an all around, just really difficult year for Winston State. And I mean, it looks like they got some momentum going, a little bit of momentum going into the off season. But it was a disappointing 5 with that schedule and only get 3 wins. It just feels like that might be a little bit of a ceiling for them, and that's just That's just really sad.
Yeah. I do want to mention before we head to break, our first break in this preview show, that all four of these teams in the CIAA and the SIC were unbeaten within their division. The CIAA, of course, in the North and the South. Fayetteville State 5-0 in the Southern Division. Shawan 5-0 in the Northern Division. Tuskegee 7-0 in the West. Of course, Benedict 7-0 in the East. All four of these teams are coming in on streaks, win streaks. Pretty significant ones, of course. Benedict 10 in a row. Tuskegee 8 in a row. Fayetteville State 6 in a row. Shawan 5 in a row. So, we talk about the importance of winning the second half of the season. Plus, that's what we have in store for all these teams. And even within conference, Shawan, of course, finished 7-1 overall in the Northern Division. Fayetteville State 7-1 in the South. So these are interesting matchups, good teams playing good football at the right times, and we'll get to breaking these games down just on the other side of this break. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Welcome back. BCSN Sports Wrap, our CIAA and SIAC football championship preview. Brian Fulford here. AD Drew on the left side of the screen. Kris Ferguson on the right. Both of these gentlemen write articles, outstanding articles that have done a great job of breaking down this season. Kris, of course, covering the CIAA. Drew covering the SIAC. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to read many of their articles during the course of this season. We're going to start with the CIAA game first. And as we do with this breakdown, we'll kind of start one side of the ball, or one side, one unit, Fayetteville offense versus Shawan defense. Then we'll flip it over, go Shawan's offense versus Fayetteville defense, talk about the special teams, and then maybe get some thoughts, some predictions on where this game might go. But I think what's interesting, we got to mention the fact that in our first contest here, this is actually a rematch game. Fayetteville State and Shawan played on a Thursday night back in September 29th it was. It was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And Fayetteville State ended up winning this contest by a count of 13-10. But when you go and look at the statistics, you will question how in the world did that happen as Shawan outgained Fayetteville State 413 to 181. That's right. Let me repeat that. 413 yards to 181. That was the total yardage by Shawan. They had 24 first downs to Fayetteville 6. On third down, they were 6 of 15. Fayetteville State was 1 of 13. They outgained them time of possession 35-55 to 23-59. Sounds like Shawan should have rolled, right? Yeah, unfortunately, when you have 5 turnovers, not 1, not 2, yeah, you get it. They had 5 turnovers in that ball game to the benefit of Fayetteville State, and they ended up winning the contest. Fayetteville State actually ended up with a 6-0, with a 7-0 lead. Actually, Fayetteville State at one point led 13-0 at going into the end, early in the third quarter. I mean, so stats lie, which is weird because Drew, you're an analytic person. You'll never, you love numbers, but numbers lie in this case. Kris, take us back, and what do you recall about this first matchup? And does the fact that this was on a Thursday, 4 or 5 days rest, any factors that you think might come into play again? But just your thoughts on the first matchup between these two teams.
Yeah, so Chowan going into the season, they had to figure out how are they going to run their offense. I mean, because Mark Hall is really the linchpin, the head coach on a former offense coordinator, now head coach. I mean, he has a pretty ingrained system at Chowan, and it's a very balanced offense and can strike you in different ways. That puts even more pressure on the back to perform. And Chowan kind of came into the season replacing, a guy who, had been in there as a starter for 4 years and knew that offense so well. So they started with, 2 different quarterbacks. They struggled. They had a freshman come in, another freshman come in, Caleb Pierce, was doing pretty well. And then Rashad McKee ended up taking this job and going with it. So, that game early in the season was a one that, you got to get some reps for somebody who is, very, very fresh into college football. And I think you just saw, a lot of youth. And, Chowan would drive down the field, get into the red zone, and they would just struggle. I mean, that's where a lot of the yards came from is, you got to get down the field first to even have a chance. And when they got into the 20s, the other thing was that the running game had a lot of struggles, especially when they got into the red zone early in the season. They were trying to, which running back could tote the load if they could rely on one running back, which they've been able to do in prior years, or is it going to be running back by committee, which is kind of what it's been more of this year. So there was just so much that Chowan was trying to figure out on offense. And, the defense had a lot of transfers coming in, and they set the tone early. But Chowan is, like Duncan runs on donuts, Chowan runs on offense. That's what Chowan is. So if they couldn't figure that out, they were going to end for a long season. And they found a recipe that really works really well for them.
Drew, what about your thoughts about this first matchup between these two teams?
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm trying to dig back to my Wayback Machine. That was a rain-filled game, if I remember correct, Kris. And
Yes.
because of that rain, Shawan turned the ball over a lot in that game. It's mighty funny, and this is kind of with Shawan over the whole season, is they had possibly one of the best quarterbacks in the CIAA, if not in HBCU football. And I'm considering them HBCU right now because they play mainly HBCU competition.
Don't start
Just for
that
this analogy.
controversy.
Just for
Oh
this
boy,
analogy.
go ahead.
Just for this analogy, though.
Tread
I
lightly,
got you.
tread
I
Uh,
got
lightly.
you. Exactly, Drew. Be careful.
in Bryce Witt. They play in the HBCU conference. We say the best quarterback in the HBCU conferences in Bryce Witt. And Bryce Witt could not get any help on the defensive side of the ball. Bryce Witt graduates. Now, Shawan has one of the better defenses in the CIAA in Division II football, and they're still struggling on offense, Chris. You can say what you want to. They're still struggling on offense. They're not the team who can come from behind and beat you. They have to get out on you, stay out in front, and then shorten the game. That's Shawan. So, that's just my take on Shawan overall right now. And Fayetteville State got lucky. Point blank. They got lucky in that particular ball game. Competitive ball game. Should have lost the ball game. I wonder if that's going to play in their mind. Hey, we should have lost that ball game. And Shawan says, hey, we should have beat them, and we're going to go ahead and take care of business this time. Or will Fayetteville State say, hey, we got lucky. We know we got lucky. So this time, let's come out and take care of business.
I just want to say, when I just want to say real quick that so when Mark Hall took over, I think he recognized that they need help on defense, and he brought in a guy, Colin Neely, who was in the PSAC, and which is kind of a league that's not exactly known for defense, but did pretty well at Edinburgh, and Colin Neely, he had to find players to kind of fit what he wanted to do, but Oregon's defense last year was pretty good. I mean, it got better as the season went on, but Chowan really just faltered against Bowie State. They faltered against the CIAA North, and I think they got ahead of themselves success wise when they got that 5-0 start. And so, it's just one of those things where they follow up what the best season they have had in Division II with another season that they're 7-3 going into the CIAA championship, and the chance to make it the best season ever for Chowan 2 years in a row.
Good point. Good point. Just to go back and just as I look at this Shawan season, and I was kind of just making notes here. They had 4 games decided by 3 points or less, including that contest at Fayetteville State. That was the only one of the 4 that they lost. So 3-1 in games decided by a field goal or less. I'll go a step further. In games decided by 1 score, they actually had 7 of those games and finished 5-2 in those games. So there's a team that strikes me as when it comes down to winning close ball games or being in close ball games, that's what their whole season has been. So just a little nugget to kind of throw out for folks. Let's talk about offense versus defense here. So we're going to start with the Fayetteville offense versus Shawan defense. Just in terms of, I'll just go here and just give you sort of the just general nuggets from a conference perspective. Fayetteville's offense actually comes in 6th in the conference in terms of scoring, averaging 23.9 a game. Shawan's defense comes in 3rd in the conference, allowing 18.7 a game. So that's just the general Fayetteville State offense versus Shawan defense. Kris, coming back to you as you think back on the season, maybe even that game, and you think about the Fayetteville offense versus Shawan defense. What are some of your thoughts there?
Oh man, this game is going to be like the Bowie State 2019, where it's like 7. This is not going to be an offensive type blow up game. This is a game. I think it's just going to be one that you're going to really enjoy. Um, Fayetteville State's offense is it's work in progress. I mean, I think that's the easiest way, the nicest thing to say about it. Um, you have a quarterback that in Kari Lane that was, the leading, like one of the leading passers last year, and he's on the bench. And because he doesn't really fit the mold of what they're trying to do on offense, which is they want a quarterback that's mobile. So they have turned to 2 quarterbacks in Damari Daniels and Caden Davis that are mobile quarterbacks and are freshmen. And, they tend to more so run the ball than pass. They've had some flashes in passing, but they're more of a smash mouth football team on offense. And they used to do that with the running backs. You think about the times with like Stevie Green, and they had all that depth behind him, and they carried that on when Stevie graduated. But now they just don't have the running backs like that. They use the quarterbacks to do that, and those guys are huge. So I think they're going to try to get into some third and short situations against Chowan and try to wear it down. But man, this is not going to be an offensive showcase for Fayetteville State. I don't think.
Yeah, they are not one of the, when you go and look at just the overall statistics as a team, they are middle of the pack. I mean, as you said, nothing statistically impresses you when you go look at the numbers compared to previous teams that have gone into this championship. Drew, any thoughts about this side of the ball, Fayetteville offense versus Chowan defense?
No, I'm going to yield to Kris, but I will say with both of these teams, whatever the line is, take the under.
Yeah, I have to go look and see where my D2 line is. I don't know which book is putting that out, but if you guys find one, you hit me up on Twitter and let me know where there's a line somewhere we can get some action in. That'd be pretty impressive. Let's flip it over to the other side here as we talk about the Chowan offense versus the Fayetteville State defense. And this is where we get into talking about one of the sides having one of the best units in the country. And we're talking about the Fayetteville State defense, which is the 6th best scoring defense in the nation, also in the conference, averaging 12 or giving up 12.8 per game, which is number 6 overall in Division II. And so, here we go with, looking at Chowan's offense, which within the CIAA average is 24.7, which is 5th, which is, again, just a point better than Fayetteville State on offense. And then, of course, as mentioned, the Fayetteville State defense, which has only allowed 17 touchdowns this season, which is pretty impressive over the course of a 10-game season. Kris, what about that Fayetteville State defense, and what impresses you? And they've had a pretty good defense over these last few years, but when we talk about this side of the ball in this matchup, what do you got?
Yeah, Fayetteville State reloaded on the defensive line. The defensive player of the year last year was on the defensive line for Fayetteville State, and they reloaded with the likes of Devin Cowan, Cameron Merrill, John Oxy, who transferred in from Catawba, and those guys just wreck shop. I mean, the way that they just control the line of scrimmage and slow down opposing offenses. I mean, that's really what Fayetteville State hinges on. And Dominic Anderson, the defensive coordinator, has just done a really good job with coaching those guys up beyond just CIAA play. I mean, if you think about, week one they beat Pembroke. It was a close game. It was like 15 or 16 to 14. I mean, Fayetteville State, they make up for the lack of offense, their offensive consistency with the defense, and that's what really keeps them in the game. Now, Chowan certainly got a challenge because, if you watch some of their last few games, they've been kind of like a home run hitter. So, they can hit you with the big splash plays. That's kind of the way Chowan's offense is built. Um, and when they get within the 20s, that's really where Fayetteville State can really bow up and make things very difficult. Um, and I think that that's really where teams have just struggled in general. So to me, I think that, yes, Chowan can rack up a lot of yards, but they really need to score from like 30 yards out, in my opinion, because once they get inside the 20s, I think it'll be pretty interesting to see if they can kind of get through that defense of Fayetteville State, and it's going to be really, 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 really tough.
Drew, what about you? Any thoughts on this matchup, this side of the ball?
No, Fayetteville State, one of the best defenses in the nation. And honestly, were it not for the other team that we're going to talk about later on in the broadcast, we may be talking about that Fayetteville defense being the best in Division II HBCU football. So, yeah, advantage has to go to Fayetteville defense against the Chowan offense, which it's going to, once again, it's going to be for an interesting slugfest game. That game was 13-10 for a reason. Despite all the yards that were accumulated by one team in that particular game. So I don't expect a whole lot of scoring in this particular ball game, especially when you may need to take in the weather conditions that may be in Virginia, as the tropical storm will probably be over that area during game time on Saturday, which will play a factor into this game. So, once again, we may have a slop fest game with a lot of fumbles in it. Kris, question. Is the surface in Salem a natural surface or is it turf? Because that may make a difference. Okay. Because if it was natural surface, that would definitely make a difference in this particular ball game because of the footing and everything else. But with turf, it's just you just have to be concerned with the wet ball.
Yeah.
Let me statistically go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to throw out that, to me, the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year is playing in this game. It's either going to be, to me, one of the defensive linemen for Fayetteville State, Montour, who's the linebacker for Chowan, who leads the conference in tackles and is very high on tackles for losses. So the offensive player of the year, we kind of know who that's going to be. It ain't in this game. But the defensive player of the year for the conference, I think, is in this game.
Who do you go back, because I think we may have missed you. I mean, obviously there are a lot of candidates here. Who did you think was going to win I mean, there's a lot of candidates. So I mean, obviously names such as Montre Moore of Chowan. You've also got Ray Darius Freeman, Jamie Blank, um, Devin Chowan. Who did you for Fayetteville? Uh, who did you think again would be defensive player of the year in the conference?
I mean, I think it's going to be Montre Moore, but I think that it's between him, Cameron Merrill, and Devin Cowan.
Yeah, I got you. Montre Moore with 100, as I just statistically looked, averaging 10 tackles a game, has 100 total tackles, 50 of them solos, along with 6 sacks. in 10 games during the course of this season. And so I just want to mention them. Let's go over to special teams for a moment here. Always one of these. I think it's one of these units that you gotta factor in a game like this, where again, Shawan has played in 7 one-score games, 4 3-point games, I should say. This could be a very close ball game. I mean, we already kind of are leaning towards it being a low-scoring game. So let's kind of look at the returns and the special teams units. And I'm trying to see. I just had my stat sheet pulled up here as I look at leaders within the conference in terms of returns. Elijah Henry of Fayetteville State averaging 28.9 yards per return this season. And then over on Shawan, you've got Jacob Streeter averaging 24.8, 297 total yards. And when you get into looking at I'll take a quick peek here at the kicking game as it relates to field goals. Fayetteville State, you got Elton Andrew, who averaging in terms of, I'm trying to see how the CIAA stats kind of look at there and break things down. He's 9 of 19 on the season with a long of 37. Shawan, Kyle Lotz, not very many field goals under his belt, just 2 of 6 on the year. So in terms of field goal attempts, actually within the conference, Fayetteville State and Elton Andrew has actually had the most field goal attempts. Kris, any thoughts there, just in general regarding the special teams and whose special teams might make a difference in this contest?
Yeah, I think it's going to be favorable states that probably makes more of a difference. And you didn't mention the punter, Jacob Young is the punter for favorable state, who I think at one point he was averaging 40 yards a punt, which was leading the conference at some point this season. And a combination of Elton Andrew and Jacob Young as the kickers. They have an ability to flip the field, get favorable state. That extra little advantage. I feel like in a game that is expected to be pretty close. The Chowan side of the ball is an area where they're pretty young as well. So I think that's probably why you see a little bit more probably rolling the dice rather than trying to kick field goals. Um, and so I think the advantage is going to be with Fayetteville State.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the punting. Yeah, Jacob Young actually ended the year number 2 in the conference overall in terms of averaging 41.1 yards per punt. Actually had twice as many as the number 1, which was Marvin Holmes, who averaged 43 over at Virginia Union. Patrick Talbot finished fourth, or had the fourth best average in the conference, 35.4. So, just wanted to make mention of that. Drew, anything you want to add there in the special teams category for either teams? Anything that caught you or that you saw?
No, definitely want to see. This game is probably going to come down to a field goal or a missed PAT. I'm honestly thinking that. Go ahead.
I'm going for block punt.
You made me.
Block punt.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, Kris, as you think back to previous CIAA championships, any particular special teams plays that have stood out as a difference maker when you think back of the history over the recent years, especially in the Fayetteville State era over the last 4?
Not so much from Fayetteville State. I would probably say that we have had games to be decided by a field goal. I think all the way back to 2015 when South State won 17-14, that was like kicking a field goal at the end of the game to win the game. Obviously the 17 set up with Bowie State and Fayetteville was a field goal in that game as well. So, there hasn't been a lot of block punts or anything like that I can think of. But most of the games in recent memory have been more so blowouts, and I think we kind of saw things kind of tighten up over the last couple of years of the Bowie State Fayetteville State matchup. So yeah.
Well, I want to take a second and probably we've said this before on some of our shows. The job that Richard Hayes Jr. has done at Fayetteville State definitely should be mentioned and always deserves to be mentioned as one of the top coaches in the CIAA. It's unfortunate that it's the previous four because we've often said that we've talked about Bowie State over the last 3 years being the team of the recent years. I mean, a win or two by Fayetteville State, and we're talking about them in that conversation as well. And that's how close they have been. It is not easy winning 5 consecutive division titles. That's what they've done under Coach Hayes. So, look, they're not taking it for granted. I know that. I know a lot of people, a lot of HBCU folks are rooting for Fayetteville State. We've jokingly said that the conference is rooting for Fayetteville State, but
I don't think that's a joke.
This is look. They won't ever say it publicly, but look, this is a good opportunity. this is a good opportunity for Fayetteville State, and so we'll give predictions here a little bit later. But let's take a break, come back, and get into talking about this heavyweight matchup in the SIAC between Tuskegee and Benedict College. So we'll be back right after these words.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's like a loop machine. Going around town, trying to get down.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wraps, special edition. Brian Fulford, AD Drew, joined by Kris Ferguson as we break down the CIAA and SIAC championships. That'll be on Saturday afternoon, this upcoming Saturday. That will be November 12th. November 12th. So, unlike in the CIAA that has the neutral site location, the SIC does a predetermined East or West division winner hosting. Just so happens that this year the Eastern Division was the scheduled winner, or the winner of the Eastern Division would host. And so with Benedict winning the East, you get a game in the beautiful Charlie W. Johnson Stadium for this contest. and Tuskegee will get on the road and travel. Of course, these two teams did not play this season. As we've mentioned earlier in the show, we've got two of the hottest teams in Division II in black college football. Of course, Benedict right now with the best record in black college football with the 10-0 record. Tuskegee with the third longest winning streak of the season at 8-0, or 8 wins in a row, 8-2 record. Of course, all of that since winning their 700th overall program history. So this is the heavyweight matchup. Nobody really predicted this. We kind of thought it might happen. And I think once we saw the first month of the season, that's when kind of everybody's eyes kind of perked up. And then especially by mid-October, everyone was already sort of talking, oh, this could be the matchup. Well, this is the matchup, and this is what we got. So, Drew, I'll start with you. Obviously, this is your wheelhouse a lot, as you've covered these teams. We've got Benedict College comes in 12th ranked in the nation. Tuskegee, I don't think they're nationally ranked. I know
No,
they are. Where are they
no.
in the region rankings?
9, the number 9 in the region.
Number 9. Okay, so playoffs are playoffs. Yeah, playoffs are on the line for both of these teams. Benedict presumably already in, regardless of win or loss. Tuskegee could benefit hugely by knocking off Benedict. It would definitely give them a bus, and so I won't get into all that. But here we go, Drew. Let's just go general impressions. And as we said we were going to do, we're going to start with Benedict offense and Tuskegee defense. But as we get into that, we'll just kind of start with general impressions about this matchup.
Brian, you mentioned that these two teams did not play this year. They didn't play last year. They didn't play the year before the pandemic or the year before that. Matter of fact, these two teams have not met on the gridiron since 2010.
Wow.
2010 since these two teams
way too long
have met.
Way too long.
I don't know how the schedule did not have these teams cross over before that, but 2010 was the last matchup that I could find between these two. And take this one step further, Tuskegee has won 12 consecutive games against Benedict. So let's throw that out there to set the stage, as they say. Benedict comes in. We know they are number 12 of the nation, number 1 in the region, number 1 top seed in the conference. Tuskegee comes in. A lot of people didn't expect a lot out of Tuskegee this year. But Brian, I told you, if Tuskegee got through till about October, they had the easiest schedule in the SIAC West and would probably win the West, which they did. Now, here's something that I want everybody to know. Tuskegee has actually been probably tested this season more than Benedict, despite what the records say. What do I mean by that? Of Tuskegee's 8 wins, 5 of those wins have come by 1 score or less, including 2 in overtime. Benedict has only had 1 game within 1 score. So I'm going to sit right there and let Kris throw his 2 cents in after that.
When you look at the difference of margin, though, you could also say Benedict's been beating the snot out of their opponents versus Tuskegee. I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it has something to do with that Benedict defense not allowing people to even play close to them. I will put that out there. So well, when we get into the offense, I'll talk about a couple other points. Go ahead, Kris.
Kris, yeah, what are your thoughts, general impressions of this matchup?
Well, I think last week kind of summed it up for me, where Tuskegee's in a dogfight with a Miles team that is clearly struggling. And, you know, it's like if you're saying that, Tuskegee's been tested, yeah, but the competition that they have been playing has not been top tier competition. And on top of that, I mean, if you think about some of the games that Benedict has played, I mean, they played, I mean, that was just an utter train wreck for the Wildcats. And I mean, and they're regionally ranked number 7 right now. And so I just think that the body of work for Benedict is just so much better that to say that it hadn't been tested, well, they have certainly played some really strong teams, at least in the conference, and dispatched them pretty easily. This matchup though is just really interesting, and I know we'll kind of get into more of the offense and defenses, but it's just such an interesting matchup for everything that AD had mentioned that they haven't played in so long. I don't see how that could happen in a conference that you're rotating opponents and they haven't played since 2010. I mean, for if that happens in
That's
the
amazing.
CIAA, people would just be wondering, who's running the show here? So yeah, that was a really interesting stat line to me.
Yeah, exactly. That might have been the nugget of the night, Drew, that you just pulled out there. The fact that these two teams haven't played in 12 years. That's crazy. Um, yeah, and I'll go
In the same
one further.
conference.
In the same conference, and speaking of conference domination, Benedict having never won an SIAC championship, Tuskegee's got 30 of them under their belt, just either shared or outright. So I throwing that out there in a conference that's been around 100 years. Tuskegee's got about a third of them.
About a third
Okay,
of them.
let's get into Benedict off the Tuskegee defense. Benedict comes in averaging 36.3 point game, which when I look nationally, puts them right about 21 in the nation in terms of average. Actually, might even be a little bit more, a little bit better than 20. Just recently, Tuskegee defense allowing 25 points a game. When it comes to rushing and passing, Benedict rushing averaging 165.2, passing at a clip of 212. Strangely enough, Tuskegee's defense is allowing about that much, 177 on the ground, 14 in the air. Benedict has scored 51 touchdowns this year. On third down, they're averaging about 41.7 on third down. Tuskegee allowing 43.2. Fourth down is 50% for Benedict. Tuskegee allowing 35.3. And then in the red zone, which
Here's the
here's
stat
an
of the day.
interesting number. This is the stat of the day, right? Benedict, 74% in the red zone, 32 of 43. In the red zone, you can score on Tuskegee in the red zone because they are allowing 80% in the red zone, 28 of 35. My gosh. So, Drew, when we start talking about offense versus defense, hell, the numbers just say score Benedict score. I mean, how do you break this down on this side when you look at it like this?
More like, how do you justify this?
Yeah, wow.
Because when you flip it to the other side, okay, Tuskegee allowing 25 points a game. Tuskegee scoring 28 points a game. Remember I said those one-score games? The statistics prove it. That they're giving up just about as many points as they are scoring. Now, the thing is, I know we're not talking about the Tuskegee offense, but the Tuskegee offense can put up points, which maybe allows that defense to make those type of mistakes where they give up those type of points. Here's what's interesting, Brian. Coach Reginald Ruffin, a former defensive coordinator, has a defense that gives up 25 points a game. 80% in the red zone. 66% touchdown efficiency within the red zone. And you got Chennis Berry, who is a former offensive coordinator. And when you think about, as much as this Benedict team has been scoring, what are we talking about more with Benedict this year? We're talking about their defense, who is number 6 in, I believe, top 5 in the nation. Correct me if I'm
top
wrong.
5, number 4. Yeah.
So I just find it ironic that the former defensive coordinator is relying on his offense, and the former offensive coordinator is relying on his defense this year to be the separator that got them into this championship game. But when you talk about the Benedict offense, were it not for a guy named Jada Byers, Eric Phoenix may be one of those people that we're talking about as a player of the year candidate as far as HBCUs go. But let's be real, Jada Byers ran away with that award. But Eric Phoenix should be in the conversation based upon what he has done for this team, even though he split time at quarterback with the 2 quarterback system. But this team is good. And then when you talk about the Benedict running game, that it comes with two players. Excuse me, I lost my page here. You've got they got Zaire Scotland and DeAndre Durant. Both of them are averaging just over 50 yards per game. Duhart. I'm sorry, Duhart. Scotland coming in right at 55 yards a game. Duhart coming in at 53 yards per game. So that's 100 and 810 yards per game that those guys are split. So what does that mean? You've got a fresh back coming at you all of the time. Then Eric Phoenix, we know Eric Phoenix will pull that thing down and tuck it and run if he can't find what he wants to see out there. And then when he decides to throw the ball, what's that guy name? Reginald Harden. He's only averaging 25 yards per reception. Let's think about that.
Yeah.
25 yards per reception with 4 touchdowns. So, this Benedict offense is very high powered, and it's going to give Tuskegee fits. Tuskegee is going to have to, defensively, they're going to have to be opportunistic. They're going to have to figure out a way to bend but not break against Benedict and get some key turnovers in order to stay in this game.
Kris, your general impressions or thoughts on this side of the ball, Benedict offense, Tuskegee defense?
Yeah, I think, everything to me with Tuskegee, with Benedict's offense starts with the offensive line, the fist. And the fist is going to give Tuskegee everything that it can handle. I mean, and then some. They're going to get beat up in this game. When you talk about having those options at running, whether it's the quarterback or whether it's a plethora of running backs, that's just going to wear a team down. And I think that, if this game is close in the first half, I think the second half is really going to show Tuskegee's mettle, because that offensive line is just going to go after them, and I think it's just going to wear them down as the game goes on, if nothing else. That's, to me, I think one of the biggest things to be looking at is, in the trenches, because I think that's really the difference maker for Benedict.
The thing that I am impressed with as I've watched and called a couple of Benedict games, the size of their receivers is really FCS level size. Actually, they have bigger receivers than some FCS teams that are highly thought of and ranked. I mean, they've got some 6'5", 6'6", 6'4" receivers that really do a good job of going and getting the ball. And then when you talked about that 1-2 punch, as you were mentioning, Scotland and Duhart. Now, and I want to make sure I get this right. As I was looking at the yards per rush, DeAndre Duhart leading the SIAC with an average per carry of 9.1 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns. And now, again, he is splitting carries with Scotland. I mean, so Zaire Scotland and Duhart are a 1-2 punch. I mean, one is probably got about 500 something yards, or close to 600. The other's got 4. And so that impresses me.
544 to 474.
Yeah, I was looking to see nationally where that 9.1 average is, and I don't know if Duhart has enough carries to be in the mix, because if he did, 9.1 would be tops in the nation. I think right now the number one in D2 averages 8.57 per carry. That's the number one guy. And just to bring it home, Jada Byers averages 6.88. Now, on the other side, Tuskegee does have a top 10 running back in yards per carry, and that's Torian Taylor. Taylor with 790 rushing yards in just 8 games, Drew. 790, averaging 6.64. So that's kind of interesting. And Kris, you talked about the offensive lines. It'll be interesting to see whose offensive line has the best day, because I think both have shown through the course of the season that that's where home is. That's where home and the heart is, so to speak. And so that's what's going to be interesting. And just a little side note, Drew, you mentioned Eric Phoenix. Probably it could be up for consideration for Offensive Player of the Year in the SIC. I think there's a young man in Fayetteville State, who or not Fayetteville, but in Fort Valley. At Fort Valley
State.
About
Emmanuel Wilson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now he might be in. Look, as good as Phoenix has led this team, what Wilson is doing at Fayetteville State, I will not be surprised if he
Fort Valley.
I got Fayetteville State on my mind here in this show, but he might be in the running for Offensive Player of the Year. Let's flip over to the other side. Tuskegee offense versus the Benedict defense. And this is where the challenge comes, right? Because nationally ranked, as you just mentioned, Benedict averaging or allowing 11.1 points a game. That's 4th best in the nation in Division II. That's the side of the ball that has wreaked havoc for many folks this year. Offensively, though, as Drew pointed out, Tuskegee offense is scoring almost 28 points. So they're sort of making up for what the defense is giving up. Rushing wise, Tuskegee offense averaging 171 yards in a contest, passing 172. So coach's dream of a balanced attack, well, that's about as balanced as you could get right there from Tuskegee. 171 on one side, 172 in the air, scoring 36 touchdowns. Benedict is only giving up 120 on the ground and 116 in the air. On third down, Tuskegee's offense, 42.8% on third down. Benedict even stingier by just giving up 25.4. Fourth down, 7 of 17 on the year for Tuskegee. Benedict, 3 of 19. So good luck when you get the 4th down against Benedict. Interesting red zone numbers, okay? Tuskegee, 91.7% in the red zone, 33 of 36. The few times that Benedict has allowed people to get into the red zone, and they've only allowed
how many times was that, Bryan?
15. There's a 10-game season. Only 15 times has their opponent been in the red zone they've given up 10 scores. So that right there, just highlight and circle that and say, can Tuskegee get the ball to the 20-yard line or inside the 20? Because that's where opportunities to score may come from. And, in the red zone, Tuskegee has scored a touchdown on 69.4% of the time. So, Drew, what's your takeaways here? Tuskegee offense versus the Benedict defense. How are they going to get points against this stingy defense?
They're going to have to get the ball to Tareen Taylor, run the ball behind Nathan Harrison, who's one of us second team SIAC offensive lineman, preseason offensive lineman, and shorten the ball game in order to have a chance. Taylor, along with quarterback Tyson Williams, are going to have to really control the ball. Keep something else in mind. Bryson Williams has a completion percentage of almost 60%, which ranks in the top 50 in the nation. So between that and the short passing game, keep the ball in bounds, allow the clock to run, keep that Benedict offense off the field. Now, that's easier said than done, especially when you look at the Benedict defense, when you have a guy like by the name of Looper Dedelis, who ranks in the top 10 in the nation in sacks. Jada Broughton, who's number 40 in sacks. Dedelis, number 11 in tackles for loss. Linebacker named Jerron Kilpatrick, along with Dedelis, have each forced 3 fumbles. So that's going to be the challenge. Can you keep these individuals? Because you can game plan for one person. It's hard to game plan when you've got 4 or 5 of them, like Benedict does on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be interesting.
Kris, your thoughts?
Well, there is one stat that you haven't mentioned that I think is going to be something I will be keying in on. Tuskegee's defense gives up more sacks to its opponents. I'm sorry, the offense gets sacked more than the Tuskegee defense gets sacks. And because of that, all the things that AD has just said about Benedict's defense, I mean, they got to be licking the chops here, because I am kind of concerned as to whether Tuskegee is going to be able to get effective pass plays off with the way that this rush is going to be coming at them with that stat line. So to me, I think that's the key there, is that, they're going to have to get the defense to try to respect the pass game some way, somehow, and get some pressure and get some pressure off the run game, because if all they're successful in doing is running, and they get into like a 35 situation, it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be good for Tuskegee here.
As we kind of move over to special teams, Drew, if you mentioned his name, I forgive me here, but I was thinking about Bryson Williams, quarterback.
Yes, I did.
For
yes.
Okay,
Tuskegee.
yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I mean what are his prospects in this game? I mean, so much attention will be on so many other people. I mean, is this the kind of moment? Is this the kind of opportunity where he might be? It's hard to consider a quarterback an X factor, but I don't think eyes will be focused on him per se. I mean, is this an opportunity for him to really shine and sort of be that difference maker in this contest?
He's going to have to be a difference maker in this contest if Tuskegee is going to win this game. One thing about Bryson Williams is he doesn't go downfield as well as some other quarterbacks. Doesn't have the deep arm talent. Now, you get him throwing the short to medium ball. He's very good and consistent with that. Henceforth, that 60% pass completion percentage that I talked about. But going downfield, taking shots downfield is not his strong point, which is going to allow Benedict to keep 8 men in the box against Tuskegee. And like Kris just said, you're talking about a team that gives up sacks. So the probably the question that you need to ask, Bryan, is will Bryson Williams finish this game healthy against Benedict because of the pressure that they like to put on the ball? And then if that's the case, what do you have coming behind him?
Now, the one positive thing about Williams is that he is second overall in the conference in total offensive touchdowns. Now, that's a stat that combines rushing and passing touchdowns. So you expect to see a lot of quarterbacks in this category. He's actually tied for second with 17 total touchdowns, 10 passing, 7 rushing, and that's number 2 behind Kelvin Durham, Fort Valley State with 18. So just wanted to put that out there. Okay, going over to special teams. This is the one area that I kind of chuckle a little bit because Drew's been on this since the beginning of the year about kicking. And, you know, he mentioned it early back in September. You stayed with in October. And so it'll be interesting to see, here we are now at the end of the season, how it matters. Benedict is only, in terms of field goals, 3 of 7. I mean, literally 7 attempts, field goal percent, 42.9%. Tuskegee, on the other hand, 9 of 16 from field goal percent, of 56.3. PATs. Now, this is going into that kicking issue. Benedict 42 of 50 on PATs. Tuskegee 33 of 34. So, I mean, what we're talking a point or two. And if you believe that this game is going to come down to a 1 score or a field goal game, probably advantages Tuskegee, maybe. Punt yardage, Tuskegee averaging 42.1 a punt, Benedict 38.7. We've seen Benedict with good days punting. We've seen bad days punting from Benedict. So I just had to put that out there to be honest. Drew, since that has been your horse that you have refused to die on, what's your thoughts there on the special teams for both teams?
Bryan, do you remember when we did the Benedict? I don't remember, was the second weekend in October with the Benedict game. I believe you and I were on the call in that game. Was that Benedict Miles?
Yes, Benedict Miles.
Okay.
Yes.
Here was the thing, Bryan. At that point in time in that game, and I remember this because I harped on you about this to you. They were 3 for 7 in field goals at that point in time. That means they have not kicked a field goal in the last 5 games. They have not even attempted a field goal in the last 5 games, Bryan. Now, is that
they haven't needed to, Drew? They haven't needed to. That's my retort. They haven't needed to.
Or in situations where you may normally have kicked a field goal, like, and I'll give you one time, which I know they had this happen, when they played Albany State. There was a time when they should have kicked the field goal, and because they had the ball inside the 20 and it was 4th down, and they went for it. And I don't remember if they ultimately got the touchdown of it. They did convert the 4th down, but I can't remember whether they got the touchdown of it. But sometimes that forces your offense to do things you really shouldn't be doing, especially this time of the year where points are a premium. Now, they'll probably survive this game without having to do that. But as they go on further into the playoffs, I hope that they have solved this situation with the field goal. Same thing with the punting situation. You know, if it's an opportunity to flip the field, advantage Tuskegee. So those are a couple of things that you definitely want to keep an eye on. That Tuskegee definitely has the advantage kicking and punting. Now, here's the thing: I don't think you want to kick the ball to the returners for either one of these two teams, Bryan. Because
I agree.
For Benedict, you have Kendall Norman, who's averaging 15 yards per punt return. He's one of the tops in the nation as far as punt return. And for Tuskegee, on the kickoff, you have Michael King. Shout out to Michael King. I actually coached him in Little League football. Just want to throw that out there. But he's number 17 in the nation, averaging almost 28 yards per kick return. And last thing, Ryan Duff sits 16th in the nation in punting average at 42 yards per punt.
How about you, Kris? Any thoughts on the special teams game or any miscellaneous stats that I might have missed or we might have missed?
Well, I think it's kind of scary if you haven't, attempted a field goal, since that point in the season. And I think it just shows how much risk taking Benedict's willing to do in those situations, which, I mean, they're going to have to do that in the playoffs. I mean, there's no doubt about it that, that type of risk taking is going to have to happen. It's the same thing with Chowan. Chowan is about one of um, the big rollers in terms of risk taking in CIW. Benedict doing something like that, I think is actually a good thing to try that and see, if those plays work. But if you get into tight games, not having a tested kicker can really come back to bite you. And so it'll be curious to see how if that unfolds here, or if we have to wait to see how that unfolds in the playoffs.
All right. One other stat that I did come across that I don't think we mentioned is penalties and penalty yardage. Now, maybe just by number, the number of penalties for Tuskegee during the course of this year, totaling 82, which you do the math, that's, probably what, 8 or, 8 a game, while Benedict penalties have been 54 total penalties. Now, the yardage is very close.
I think we lost Bryan there for a moment. He's down in Florida with with all those storms. But going back over those penalty yardage, Benedict on the season, 54 penalties for 537 yards. Tuskegee has 82 penalties, 613 yards. And Kris also, time of possession. I guess Benedict likes to score quick because they actually are averaging under 30 minutes time of possession, 29:06, whereas Tuskegee is trying to hold the ball and shorten the game as much as possible, 31-14 in time of possession. So, Kris, anything about those two stats that sticks out to you?
Well, Benedict having almost as many penalty yards as Tuskegee does means that when they are doing penalties, it's probably resulting in first downs, and they're going to have to be very careful of that. Whether it's a pass interference or unsportsmanlike conduct penalties or something like that. That 10 yards or some big chunk yards and reset the downs. They're going to have to be very careful with that. Whereas, Tuskegee's might be something more like holding, especially if that offensive line is not doing like they're supposed to, and their balanced offense means we want to run the ball. You're more likely to get more of the holding type penalties in those situations. I just think that both teams going to have to play a clean game here. And it'll be really interesting because, they haven't seen each other in so long that you don't really pick up on other teams' tendencies when you don't play in such a long time.
Yeah. One last thing, and we didn't talk about it in with the CIAA. And if you want to bring us up with the CIAA people, please feel free. But the coaches, Coach Ruffin is coaching in his 6th SIAC championship game, 4 consecutive. He's 4-1 in those previous 5. Coach Berry's is only in his 2nd season, has already made it to the SIAC championship. So, does that even matter in a game like this? And if you would, after you answer that, go back and talk about those coaches from the CIAA and break those coaches down for everybody.
Yeah, I think from the SIAC perspective, that matters a lot. I mean, because out of the four coaches that have made it to their respective championship games, he's the only one that's actually won a championship. And so, I think it's just important that, Tuskegee being the underdog here, it may help with settling them down and make them realize that, hey, it's 4 quarters. They put on their shoes like we put on our shoes, and go out there, have fun, make it a memorable game, and also scheming, right? That they're going to sit down and break down film. And I think you may see a little bit more risk taking from Tuskegee in a game like this because the coaches certainly know that there's a lot on the line here. Whereas Benedict, they want to win a championship, right? And I think that they're going to be so really motivated to do that. But they still got football ahead of them too beyond this game. Whereas Tuskegee is playing for their playoff lives in this game, so there's a lot at stake. And, certainly having that experience really helps because I think that, if you're outmatched there's a talent gap there, which there seems to be a little bit of a talent gap there, it could be made up in coaching. Now, on the CIAA side, you have, Coach Hayes, Richard Hayes, Fayetteville State, who's, in this game for the fifth consecutive season, going up against Mark Hall of Chowan, who's in this game. Really, Chowan's in the game for the first time ever as a Division II school and as a CIAA member. And I think here, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Coach Hall is, he's kind of the riverboat gambler. I mean, he's definitely going to, pull out a lot of different plays that are just different. The quarterback running the ball, jet sweeps. He does a lot of trick plays. I'm sure they practice those things, and you don't normally see that from a lot of HBCU football. And I think it's just emblematic of, I think he knows that this is a really big deal, and he's going to play like it. But I don't think you're going to see a ton of changes. I think people who have not watched Chowan football, which, has been free, unlike the rest of the CIAA this year, if they haven't watched Chowan football, I think they're in for a little bit of a treat on offense from him. And I think Coach Hayes, you don't have the boogeyman, Bowie State, here again, and they don't get a crack at Virginia Union, which they lost 2 by 3, by the way. This is about as good a chance as ever to finally get over that hump against a team that you actually have already beaten. And so I think it'll just be really interesting because I think Chowan is just, they're definitely a much more experienced team than they were when they played them a few weeks ago. And it's really going to test out, Coach Hayes and what he and his staff is going to be able to do.
All right, and with that, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take it to a break. Bryan is going to rejoin us after the break. He's got his internet issues resolved. We're going to get into the predictions after we come back from the break. We're going to break down the playoff projections for each conference, who will get in, where those teams will possibly rank. And then we're going to call it a night, my brother. Some people have the holiday tomorrow, Veterans Day. Shout out to all the veterans out there. Those who served our country well. Some of us still have to go in and hit the clock if the storm doesn't catch us down here in South Georgia. But you're watching and you're listening, watching to the BCSN SportsWrap. AD Drew, Bryan Fulford, Kris Ferguson. This is the CIAA SIAC Championship Preview. We will be right back.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
It's the show where we take you inside the game before the game begins. It's the pregame. With your host, Charles Bishop and Neely. So get ready, because we pregame harder than the other show's party. It's the pregame.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1. This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan and AD Drew, Kris Ferguson. I promise I'm here in audio. Hopefully, who knows what's going on with my internet video connection? As explain Tropical Storm Nicole. So, hopefully, you guys are hearing me well.
Yes, yes, we are. Yes,
all
yes,
right.
but you move it,
right.
but you move it like a old Android phone. I'm sorry, man. I couldn't help it.
Right. This is how T-Mobile treats its 18 years. This is how they treat their 18. I gotta say, with bad internet connections. Okay. Let's play off predictions before we get, or playoff analysis before we give these game predictions. What stake? Who's going where? How do you see this out? Kris, start with you, Kris. Your thoughts on the playoffs and how this is going to shake out.
Well, right now you have Benedict, who's won Virginia Union for Fort Valley is 7. and Tuskegee at 9. A couple of things about the playoff really quickly is number one, there are no automatic bids for conference champions. Number two is the top 7 get in. And given that in the CIAA's case, you got Virginia Union in the top 7, there's no earned access, which would be anybody who was 8 and 9. If nobody else was in the conference in the top 7, they could have pumped somebody out. So, really, the CIAA, certainly has one team locked in that Virginia Union's not playing this week. They're in. Benedict is in as well. Now, if they win on Saturday, then they essentially will become the first HBCU to get a top seed in the last 10 years. There have been close teams that gotten close. Bowie State was 2 last year. Virginia State was 2 in 2017. But this will be the first time in 10 years, 10-year anniversary, Winston State getting a 1 seed that, another HBCU gets to that coveted seed. And that's important because then they get a first round bye. There's only the top seed gets a first round bye. Now, Fort Valley State is in a really precarious position because we know what happened last year. Savannah State was in this very same position last year, and they got bumped out. They did not play an 11th game. They did not make the championship game, and they were left out. But Fort Valley, I think, is in a better position to stay 7 or even go up relative to their peers. And a lot of that has to do with the South Atlantics beating up on each other. There's a lot of 8-2 teams in the South Atlantic. Fort Valley's strength of schedule is better than a few of those teams, and that really helps with seeing really what it's coming down to. A bunch of 8-2 teams that you're looking at the performance indicator, you're looking at the strength of schedule, and that's really what's helping Fort Valley to be to where they are. I think, Tuskegee winning the championship could possibly knock Fort Valley out. So that's a possibility. But Fort Valley, I believe, has the head-to-head tiebreaker over Tuskegee. So, that comes into play. If they're 1-7 and 1-8, if Fort Valley was 8 and Tuskegee was 7, that tiebreaker could come into play and kick Tuskegee out. But in this case, it's the other way around. The other question I've gotten a lot this year is, well, what do you do with Fayetteville State and Chowan? Unfortunately for Fayetteville State, their issue is strength of schedule. It's very, very weak. For a 2-loss team, when you're measuring them up against the South Atlantic, who they lost to Wingate. The strength of schedule with the CIAA South being as bad as it is, it's just not there. And so, they needed to really run the table or even have just 1 loss and 2 losses just isn't going to cut it for them. So I don't see them getting into the field. It's just too crowded. And Chowan is interesting because they're 7-3. And, you have all these 2-loss teams ahead of them. But a 7-3 team in which you get a rematch at one of the teams that beat you gives Chowan the ability to neutralize that loss against Fayetteville State. And if that happens, I think things get a little bit more interesting because Chowan's strength of schedule is better than a lot of those 8-2 teams. It's better than, a Tusculum that actually did beat them earlier this year. It's better than, I believe, Lenore-Ryan. It's better than Albany State. It's better than some of these teams that are ahead of them. And they would need somebody like a Mars Hill to lose because the strength of schedule for Mars Hill is not good, and Mars Hill is playing Newberry in the championship game for the South Atlantic. So it's just one of those things where Chowan makes for a very interesting conversation for the end. And if they win, they're playing as good as anybody right now. But it's a long shot. Honestly, it is a huge long shot. So the other thing I just want to note about playoffs is that the Gulf South teams are all playing teams that they have already played in Week 11. They're playing rematches. So, if a team's already beaten somebody else, which, the Delta States, the West Georgias, the West Floridas, they all, if I remember correctly, beat all the teams that they're playing this week. So they're not going to get a boost by beating the same team again, which means that the number one seed is really Benedict's to lose at this point. The Virginia Union at 4, they really need to stay at 4 to get a home game because the top 4 gets home games. So that's kind of the breakdown of playoffs to me.
Drew, anything you want to add into that, or any other thoughts regarding playoffs?
First thing I want to add is you need to go to d2football.com and read the article that I put out today entitled Fort Valley Submits Resume Early to Super Region 2 Committee because they did not play that 11th game. So I took the time to break down the Fort Valley season and how their resume may be discussed on Sunday before the selection show comes out at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on NCAA.com. And I'm just going down some of the notes I made in there. Kris already mentioned Tuskegee and Benedict. Let's talk about UVA Wise and Wingate. Wingate lost the tiebreaker for the SAC championship game, which means they are on the outside looking in, and they're taking on a 2-8 UVA Wise team this weekend. Wingate sits at number 5. Playing a 2-8 team the last week of the season does not help your strength of schedule. Advantage Fort Valley by being idle. Just want to put that out there. Mars Hill takes on Newberry in the SAC championship game. Newberry was ranked up until this past week. Mars Hill sits at 6, just above Fort Valley. Newberry defeats Mars Hill. Fort Valley moves up at least one spot. Just want to put that out there for some things for you guys to think about. Emory and Henry at Limestone. What was that, Brian?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Now, Emory and Henry at Limestone. Limestone sits number 8, just behind Fort Valley. Now, this game could play a little bit because you're taking on an Emory and Henry team that sits at 500 going into this game. But if you defeat them, when they look at them on Sunday, now they're below 500. And the committee really likes to see victories with teams over 500, especially within region, which is why the number 9 team, Tuskegee, is at a disadvantage because they've only faced one team over 500. We talked about that soft schedule earlier. And they are 0-1 against that team. And who is that 0-1 to? Fort Valley, that sits above Tuskegee already in the ranking. Advantage Fort Valley. And then you've got your number 10 team, which comes out of the Gulf South, which is West Georgia. Look, West Georgia's probably out of a win or lose. Everybody in front of them could lose, and West Georgia still probably will not get in. So you could. Now, I want to throw this out to you, Kris. I've got this bullet point in there in the article. I don't know if you've had a chance to glance at it yet. Called Chaos. Wingate loses, Mars Hill loses, Tuskegee wins. Do both Tuskegee and Fort Valley get in now? Just got to put that out there. Benedict loses their number one seed. Benedict loses their number one seed, but we could wind up with 4 HBCUs under that scenario. Because Tuskegee definitely is going to get a bump by beating the number one team. So we know that they're bumped from 9 to at least 7. But if those other 2 teams in front of Fort Valley should lose, Fort Valley may go from 7 up to 6. Or maybe even possibly up to 5. Just got to put that out there. We could wind up with 4 HBCUs under my chaos scenario. I would hate it for Benedict, but as a HBCU pundit, I would love to see 4 of them in there. So that's it. But yeah, go to d2football.com. You can check out that article and my SIAC championship article. Have you put your article out yet for the week, Kris?
No, I'll be typing that up as soon as I get off of here.
I got you. Well, make sure you go check out Kris's CIAA preview. It'll be published in the morning.
The one thing that I'd like to add when I look at Benedict as the potentially the number one overall, could schedule. I went back and looked at it. It was an entire, pretty much an HBCU set. They opened the season against the CIAA team. Elizabeth City, bottom half team. But then they played Lane. And the rest of the SIAC. So pretty much 9 of their 10 games have been against IAC schools, which them winning and getting the number one overall seed speaks real highly of the SIAC and the fact that the SIAC might be the best conference in the region. I just don't know if you guys agree or disagree with me on that, but just an observation. Let's go to predictions. And let's start
can I throw
CIAA.
Before you throw it out, Brian, I just want to put this out there.
Okay.
This is going to be real quick. Assuming that everything holds as it is right now with the 7 that are in, or the 7 that are in on Sunday, you will potentially be looking at Fort Valley going to either Delta State or West Florida for the opening round matchup, because they're going to try to keep the distance. I see Fort Valley going over to Delta State, Wingate going down to West Florida, and Mars Hill traveling up to Virginia Union if everything holds as it is currently right now in the opening round.
It's very possible.
Okay.
I think there's another prediction that showed a little bit different with Wingate going to Virginia Union and Mars Hill going to West Florida. But I think that's definitely a scenario that's more favorable to the HBCUs for sure, I think. The one thing I didn't want to mention in terms of advantages for Fort Valley is that Fort Valley and Limestone actually have identical strength of schedule, like down to the 3 numbers.
Yes.
So with Limestone playing the 11th game against a team that's under 500, their strength of schedule is going down. So that's another advantage too for Fort Valley getting in.
All right. Anything else? So we can go to predictions. Anybody wants to add, so we can go to predictions.
No.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's go to the CIAA. That game is scheduled to kick off at somebody give me the kickoff time.
Noon. That's at noon. I do believe.
Noon. It's early. earlier than previous years? Has it always been at noon, Kris?
I thought it was 1 o'clock. I need to go check my notes there.
I may be
Yeah,
wrong.
look, that's well, I heard you say it. So anyway, let's either a noon or a 1 p.m. kickoff. We'll figure that out here in a moment. A rematch of a previous from back in September. Fayetteville State in their 5th consecutive championship, looking for their first title. Shawan never been here before. This is their first appearance. Kris, I'll go to you first. Score and prediction. How do you think this one goes?
Well, as kind of mentioned earlier, these are, these are two of the three best teams in the CIAA. The other one in Virginia, and those three teams kind of sort of beat up on each other. Because Virginia Union did beat Fayetteville, and Fayetteville beat Chowan. Chowan beat Virginia Union. So it's just kind of really interesting that all three of those games were very physical games, and I just see a situation here where these two games, it's going to be a very close game. I do think that this score is probably going to be a 21-17 type score. I do think that in this particular case, that Chowan is probably going to be looking to get redemption because they felt like they could have won that game against Fayetteville earlier this season. So I think Chowan is going to get redemption in this game, much to the dismay of many viewers on the show. So if you find out that I've gone into witness protection, you'll know why.
Drew, who do you have score and prediction?
Before I put out score and prediction, that game is scheduled for 1 o'clock in Salem, Virginia. That game will be on Aspire TV. If you're one of the three people who get Aspire, make sure that you tune in to Aspire TV. Also going on the same day, the CIAA volleyball championships will also be in Salem at the Civic Center on Saturday. So if you're in the Salem, Virginia area, actually tomorrow and Saturday, make sure you check out the CIAA volleyball championships. Now, getting back to the prediction. First, I always like to go to Massey Ratings. MasseyRatings.com has this game with a predicted score of 20-19 in favor of Chowan, with a 51% win probability for Chowan. So, with that being said, as much as these defenses are good, I have to favor the Fayetteville defense a little bit more. They are better ranked, and Fayetteville offense is just slightly better than Chowan's offense, and I think that's just going to be enough to get it through. The over-under on this game is definitely those 40 points, 39 points that they've got in there. Normally you say the first to 20 wins the game. I'm honestly going to say the first to double digits is going to win this game on Saturday.
And you're taking Fayetteville State. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. Yes, I'm taking Fayetteville State.
All right. So that leaves me with the middle. I thought you sounded like you were going to go on there for a second, but I'm going to go close ball game, 3-ball game time. I'll stick with similar outcome. I'll go Fayetteville State 17, Chowan 14, and I think it's time. I think it's time to celebrate Fayetteville State as a champion and give Coach Hayes and those guys their flowers. So we'll see. Should be a good one. So that's a CIAA game. So Juan, Drew, and I, Fayetteville right, here we go. SIAC matchup. Benedict, Tuskegee. Drew, I'll start with you since this is your wheelhouse. SIAC, who do you got? Benedict or Tuskegee? Head or heart? Who you going with, Drew?
Started off with Bassey. Bassey has this game predicted score 31-14 in favor of Benedict. Benedict with an 87% win probability in this particular ball game. Look, this game is going to come down to one thing. Can the Tuskegee offense keep up with the Benedict offense? Yes, they can. Can the Tuskegee defense stop the Benedict offense? No, they can't. Tuskegee's only chance is to put the ball in Tareem Taylor's hands, shorten the ball game, get a turnover, get a special teams play. That's the only chance Tuskegee has in this ball game. But Coach Ruffin, I believe in Coach Ruffin. Coach Ruffin has been known to pull a rabbit out of his hat. Then I think back to last year. Albany State. And I was waiting on that rabbit to come out the hat. And all he pulled out was fur against Albany State last year. I love Mother Tuskegee, but I have to say with my professionalism, I have to pick Benedict Tigers in this ball game, and I have to pick the Benedict Tigers by double digits in this ball game.
I appreciate you. I know that was tough. And hey, look, it may have been fur. Was it 2019? He pulled the whole fleet of rabbits out the hat back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So look,
Yes,
you can't come out.
He got the leftover in 21.
Yeah, when nothing but fur left in that one. So yeah, that'll be. Kris, how about you? How do you see this going?
I know the pain. I felt the pain of AD having to make that pick. I know that's the pain I've had all season when Winston State. I know that pain. So, anywho, yeah, this game is going to be a real challenge for Tuskegee. I mean, I just think that they've seen a rushing attack like this before early in the season with Fort Valley, and they're going to see something like that again this time around. One that may be just a little bit more potent than what they experienced at Fort Valley. And this game, I don't think close for many reasons, including the fact that this is not really a neutral site game. I mean, this is like the Rams playing
It's a home game.
the Super Bowl at their house. This is a home game. I mean, yeah, students got to pay, fine, whatever, but it's a virtual home game. So,
can I cut you off right there, though, Kris?
Yep.
It may be in Benedict Stadium, but you may see more crimson and gold in that stadium than you see purple and gold. So, although it may be their turf, it may be crowd advantage Tuskegee. Sorry, I had to put that out.
That's fair. That's fair. Nonetheless, I think that this is a double-digit win for Benedict. I think it's going to be Benedict by 17.
That's almost what I have, Kris. I've got Benedict 28-10, 18 points. So I think we're simpatico in our thought process that and look, my 10, it might be a close game in the first half, but I'll go second half. with 2 touchdowns. So it might be a 14-10 ball game at halftime, and runs away with it in the second half with a shutout in the second half. So that's how I'm looking at that. So 1-0 win day for Jenice Berry and Benedict. And hopefully the scenario where we see at least, I think if we see at least 3 HBCUs in the playoffs, that'd be great. I think we definitely got 2 going in. I'd love to see a third one. So we'll kind of keep it there. All right, hey Kris, appreciate your time tonight. You guys go check out Kris's article, d2ball.com, and maybe you're following him at D2Ferg, F-E-R, and that's where you can, especially on game day. Are you going to the game, Kris, or are you just live tweeting?
Yes. No, I'll be there.
Okay. So enjoy and safe travels. Drew, what about you? Are you heading to Columbia?
Yes, my plans are right now to be in Columbia. I maybe do a little bit of double duty as Benedict has a basketball going on also on Saturday. So although the stadium and the basketball arena are about 2 miles apart, I'll be between the two as much as possible, trying to cover both.
All right, and make sure to follow Drew at Drew, and make sure to check out his article. 2 interesting articles. Not only did he put up a preview, but also an article that gives a resume and what Valley State has in front of them. So go check that out. You can go read both of their articles on d2football.com. And we've already retweeted out, and we'll make sure to retweet his article once he finishes it typing tonight. Kris, staying in late with us tonight and getting this one done. Looking forward to a great Saturday of championship, the SIC championship, I believe at 2 p.m. Central, at 3 Eastern. So 2 Central, 2, I'm sorry, 2 Eastern. I forgot.
2 Eastern, 1 Central on ESPN 3, I believe.
ESPN 3. All right, so that'll be a watch. So that's going to do for Kris Ferguson and AD True. That's going to do it for tonight. Show. Hey, thanks for hanging in there with us, guys. We'll be back on Sunday night on our regular time. We'll talk about this game and the other games that occurred over on the FCS side, and we will know who is in and who is not by the time we do our SportsWrap show on Sunday night. So we look forward to bringing that show to you then. Be well, be safe, have a good night, and make sure to get out to either Salem, Virginia, or Columbia, South Carolina for these championship games. Peace out, everybody.
Wahala.
But yeah, my beats, they are hard.